Passage 2 from Test 4, numbers 12 to 22. The hype of healthier organic food. Some people buy organic food because they believe organically grown crops are more nutritious and safer for consumption than the people who purchase their conventionally grown counterparts, which are usually produced with pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. So what's going on here in number 12? Actually, what we have here is a comparison error. Notice we are comparing, on the one hand, organically grown crops. We're saying they are more nutritious and safer for consumption than the people who purchase their conventionally grown counterparts. Here, we want to compare the organically grown crops to the conventionally grown crops, the conventionally grown counterparts, not to the people. This is a comparison error because we're comparing people to crops, and we want to compare crops to crops. So A is not going to good. B and C don't work because B and C focus on the purchasing of these counterparts, and we're not comparing crops to the purchasing of conventionally grown counterparts, but to the counterparts themselves. So in fact, we just want to delete this, because when we delete this, we're going to say that the organically grown crops are more nutritious and safer for consumption than their conventionally grown counterparts. So now we're comparing the right things, and that leads us to choice D. 13. In the name of health, spending $1.60 for every dollar they would have spent on food that is grown in a manner that is considered conventional. So notice here, we actually have no subject in the sentence. This is why this is a fragment. We have no subject to the start of the sentence, so we would want to know who is doing this spending, right? Probably the people buying this food. So we look at the choices. The only one with the subject is B. These consumers spend $1.60 for every dollar they would have spent on food that is grown in a manner that is considered conventional. So B is perfectly fine because it adds a subject, and the others don't. The others change the verb or the pseudo-verb into different forms, but we're still missing that subject, which is the key to making this no longer a fragment. So this one is B. 14. So in the name of health, these consumers spend $1.60 for every dollar they would have spent on food that is grown in a manner that is considered conventional. Looking at the original, this is pretty wordy. Grown in a manner that is considered conventional. Hopefully we can find something a bit shorter, more concise. Food that is grown with conventional methods using pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. Notice this is redundant because we mentioned this exactly in the previous sentence. There's no reason to repeat this. Conventionally and therefore not organically grown. Again, that's just redundant. We know we're setting up this dichotomy between organic versus conventional, so repeating this dichotomy is not relevant, not necessary. So all we need is D, conventionally grown. Boom, done. Nice and short. Says what it needs to say. No wordiness. So D. Number 15. Scientific evidence, therefore, suggests that consumers do not reap significant benefits in terms of either nutritional value or safety from organic food. This opening paragraph is talking about why people buy organic crops. They think that they're more nutritious, they think they're safer, certainly more so than the conventionally grown food, and therefore they'll spend more money for it. But then we see in this final sentence that it turns out that you don't actually get, according to this passage, benefits from this kind of food that you would think. So therefore is not right, because that shows a conclusion of some line of reasoning, whereas we're looking for something, again, that shows contrast. This is an unexpected turn in the essay. The essay lays out this idea that people buy this food for all these reasons, but it turns out those reasons aren't true. And notice that word but, that's a word of contrast. And the only word here that shows contrast is however. Therefore, subsequently, furthermore, all show a kind of cause and effect or building up on a particular argument previously, which is not working, which is not what's going on here. We're taking a radical shift in this paragraph, and however shows that best. So we're going to go with C. 16. Although advocates of organic food preserve that organic food produce is healthier than conventionally grown produce because it has more vitamins and minerals, this assertion is not supported by scientific research. So preserve, we look at the choices. This is a diction question. Do the organic food advocates preserve that their food is healthier? Well, that's not quite the right word here. They're not preserving food, for example. That's, I guess, what they're trying to go for, but they're making an argument. They are sticking to a claim, we might say. So for that reason, preserve is not going to work. Do the advocates carry on that organic produce is healthier? Nah, that's not quite the right phrase here. Do they maintain that organic produce is healthier? Yeah, maintain basically in this context means to continue making an argument even in the face of contradictory evidence or in the face of counter arguments. You are maintaining a particular argument in the face of that. So that works good. Sustain, you might think, is similar, but we don't use sustain in this context in a standard way. So we don't say that we don't say advocates of organic food sustain that. They might say, sustain an argument maybe, but not sustain that organic produce is healthier. So D is not quite right, but they do maintain this argument. They do maintain that something. This is the correct usage, so we go with choice C. 17. For instance, one review published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition provided analysis of the results of comparative studies conducted over a span of 50 years. Researchers consistently found no evidence that organic crops are more nutritious than conventionally grown ones in terms of their vitamin and mineral contents. So notice the previous sentence talked about how the research doesn't show that the food is healthier, and then this gives an example of a study that shows organic food isn't healthier. So for instance actually looks pretty good, right? It's showing an example of the argument that's laid out in the opening sentence. So we actually like for instance. This is an example. However shows contrast. We don't want contrast here, we want an example. In addition would be if we were giving an additional example, but this is the first example of a more general statement discussed previously. Same thing with likewise. Likewise, in addition, both build off of some previous assertion or statement and give another example of it, but this is giving a first example, so we need something like for instance, which is choice A. Number 18, do we want to add the sentence here? The USDA reports that organic agricultural products are now available in approximately 20,000 markets specializing in natural foods. Let's just read this last sentence. Similarly, Stanford University researchers who examined almost 250 studies comparing the nutritional content of different kinds of organic food with that of their non-organic counterparts found very little difference between the two. So here, do we want to add a sentence about the fact that these products are in 20,000 markets? Is that relevant here? This paragraph is about whether or not organic products actually are healthier for you than conventional products, and the studies, at least revealed here, say no. Doesn't make sense. Is it on topic to introduce a sentence about markets and where these things are located? Not in this paragraph. Maybe the first paragraph, but not in this one. So it is going to be a no. Yes, because it adds relevant research finding from a government agency. It is a research finding, I suppose, but it's not a research finding germane to this discussion in this paragraph. Yes, because it supports the passage's argument that organic food is less nutritious. Does not say anything about whether it's less nutritious. No, because it is not relevant to the paragraph's discussion of scientific evidence. That looks good. No, because it introduces a term that has not been defined in the passage. Not quite sure what term they're referring to. That's not the main objection. The main objection, for sure, is C. Number 19. Evidence also undermines the claim that organic food is safer to eat. While researchers have found lower levels of pesticide residue in organic produce than in non-organic produce, the pesticide residue detected in conventional produce falls within acceptable safety limits. According to such organizations as the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the minute amounts of residue falling within such limits have no negative impact on human health. We look at the choices and we see that we're changing the form of the verb, so we definitely want to check subject-verb agreement. And what is the subject here? What has or have no negative impact? And the subject here is the minute amounts of residue, which is plural. So we would say minute amounts have, so that's appropriate. Notice B, C, and D are all singular. It would be if we had residue as the subject. If residue were the subject, it would be the residue is having, or the residue has had, or the residue has. But here the subject is the minute amounts of residue, which is plural, and therefore we need a plural verb, and so we're actually happy with the original. Choice A. Number 20. At this point, the writer wants to further reinforce the paragraph's claim about the safety of non-organic food. Which choice most effectively accomplishes this goal? So we have a specific thing the question wants, which is which supports the safety of non-organic food. To be labeled organic, a product must meet certain standards determined and monitored by the USDA. This says nothing about non-organic food. Organic food, however, is regulated to eliminate artificial ingredients that include certain types of blah, blah, blah. Nothing about non-organic food. Moreover, consumers who are concerned about ingesting pesticide residue can eliminate much of it by simply washing or peeling produce before eating it. Okay, I mean, this, if we're worried about, which is what this paragraph is discussing, pesticides being used on conventional products and whether that's a bad thing, here it's saying, well, in addition, not only does this residue not really, is there not really this much of this residue on the fruit to start with, if you're worried about it, wash it off. So this does further talk about the idea that non-conventional or non-organic conventional food can be healthy even if it's sprayed with pesticides for all these reasons, including choice C. So C looks pretty good. D, in fact, the EPA estimates that about 1/5 of the pesticides used worldwide are applied to crops in the United States. It's about pesticides, but it's not specifically about the safety of non-organic food, building on the previous discussion. The only one that does that is C. Number 21. Based on scientific evidence, organic food offers neither significant nutritional nor safety benefits for consumers. Proponents of organic food, of course, are quick to add that there are numerous other reasons to buy organic food. So here we're using there, but this is the possessive there. We want the place there. There are, T-H-E-R-E. So we're going to get rid of D and A. Looking at B and C, the difference here is between is and are, singular, plural. Do we need that? Let's see. Do we need it to be plural or singular? Well, the subject of this is numerous other reasons, right? There are numerous other reasons. So for that reason, we're happy with plural, and we would get rid of C, right? If you read with is, it just doesn't sound right because it's got to match with the numerous other reasons. It's got to agree. Proponents of organic food, of course, are quick to add that there is numerous other reasons. No, there are numerous other reasons. So for that reason, we will stick with R and go with B. And now 22. Proponents of organic food, of course, are quick to add that there are numerous other reasons to buy organic food, such as a desire to, and then it lists out a couple of things. So remember what we said here. We need a comma after food is okay. Either way, it's fine. So the major issue, though, is no comma after such as is required. In fact, no punctuation at all after such as is required. So A, B, and C are all gone. We don't need a colon. We don't need a comma. We're happy with D. We can keep the comma after food. Either way, it's no problem. The comma after such as is no good, so we'll go with choice D.